We stepped out onto the golden sand. The sun was high and burning down.
As a busy lawyer, I often start work at 5 a.m. to get ahead of the tidal wave of email, phone calls, and meetings that confront me every day. Back in 2004, my job often made me angry because of limited opportunities to channel my stress. My sole outlet was riding my bike and training for endurance events like the Hotter Than Hell 100. That year, my wife planned a family trip to the Grand Canyon. When I first peered into the big ditch, I was dumbfounded by the majestic vistas. Intrigued by a faint trail several thousand feet below, I herded my young family to the trailhead. There, a guy who had made it down to the Colorado River told me, "It's really difficult but awesome, dude. The best thing I've ever done. You gotta do it." I recklessly persuaded my family of 5 to walk down the trail just a little way. We soon encountered ice that sloped towards the edge of a several hundred-foot drop. My wife, our 14-year-old and 11-year-old daughters, and 8-year-old son were terrified, so we headed back up to the safety of the flat ground and railings at the top. But I'm a goal-oriented person. Hiking to the river and back was an incredible athletic event that I had to conquer. Back in Dallas, my singular focus on work shifted. I couldn't stop thinking about how I wanted to get back to the canyon. I asked my friend Jeffrey about a hike he had done there. He searched for words to describe it, finally settling on epic. It was epic. The trip stretched for 25 hot and dusty miles over 4 days, from the north rim down to the river and back up to the south rim. Forgetting that my biggest hike to date had been with my daughters on an Indian princess outing, I told Jeffrey I wanted to go for it, and he offered to join me. The first time I shouldered my backpack full of 30 pounds of gear, food, and clothes, I wanted to call it off. My pack dug into my shoulders, making every step a challenge. I felt the sun burning my exposed skin despite constantly slathering on sunscreen. My legs ached from the relentless descent. This couldn't have been more different than my comfortable air-conditioned office back in Dallas, but I had never felt more alive. At the end of the second day, I felt like I'd been in a fog that had suddenly lifted. My mind was no longer churning. I was totally in the moment, aware of my breath entering and leaving my body, the sweat stinging my eyes, the lizard that captivated me for 5 minutes, and the sun filtering through the leaves of the cottonwood trees by the creek. It was a new sensation of truly being at peace. We camped near Phantom Ranch, which sits at the bottom of the canyon next to the river. Phantom includes a ranger station, bunkhouses, campgrounds, and a canteen that serves meals and the coldest, tastiest beer I've ever had. We met a guy there who had just returned from Clear Creek, a remote area of unspoiled beauty including pristine Anasazi ruins. Difficult to get to, but totally worth it. Jeffrey and I vowed to return so we could see for ourselves. We added a third person, Fred, to the expedition. The itinerary for this trip included 25 additional miles and 3 more days and nights. At Phantom, a ranger stopped by to inspect our permit. "I see you guys are heading out to Clear Creek tomorrow. What time are you planning to be on the trail?" "About 6 a.m., we said. "Well, that trail is totally exposed. If I were you, I'd get out no later than 4. We took her advice, but were only halfway to Clear Creek when the dividing line between shade and sun advanced toward us like a wildfire burning out of control. The heat hit us like a lightning bolt. There was no water source between Phantom and Clear Creek. I had to rely on the 2 gallons of water I was carrying. I was sweating out the water about as fast as I could drink it. I was crazy with the heat. Jeffrey and Fred were way ahead of me and out of sight. I was alone. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I was very fit prior to this hike, riding my bike 100 to 200 miles a week. I prayed that would be enough. God, please let me get to Clear Creek. I was coated with sweat and had chafing in places I don't like to think about. I ran out of water, causing me to panic, my heart rate soaring. I sat down to take stock of myself. I thought of how cold the water would be at Clear Creek and how grateful I would be for the shade of the cottonwood trees. That calmed me down and gave me the strength I needed. Finally, I dragged into Clear Creek, feeling like I just completed 2 hotter than hell hundreds back to back. I took a few moments to enjoy not moving. Then my eyes settled on Clear Creek, which runs in an emerald green valley surrounded by towering canyon walls and shades of orange and purple. It was stunning, and we were totally alone. We set up camp that afternoon. Jeffrey, as an architect, considers his tent an opportunity to create a masterpiece. As I was telling him how architecturally pleasing his tent was, he caught the head of a tent stake between his big toe and the rest of his foot. A ragged gash from the top to the bottom of his foot caused blood to spurt everywhere. Great! Jeffrey needed emergency medical assistance, but we had no way to communicate with anyone to get help. The 3 of us would have to hike out, or one of us would have to get help while the other stayed with Jeffrey. Jeffrey went to work on getting the bleeding stopped, which he did with a combination of pressure, gauze, and duct tape, the only medical supplies we had. We had no water, so Fred and I went down to the creek and filtered several gallons of water for the return trip. Jeffrey is very tough and was able to put on his boot, shoulder his pack, and walk. I was really worried that he wouldn't be able to make it with such a serious injury. I gave him a Vicodin tablet that I carry for such emergencies, and it helped him endure the pain. We hiked until it was dark. I spent a tense night worrying about Jeffrey. We were back on the trail at 4 a.m. With another round of Vicodin for Jeffrey, we made it to Phantom by 10. I thought the ordeal was over. The ranger at Phantom removed the dressing and found Jeffrey's big toe dangling from his foot, with the duct tape buried in the wound. Jeffrey was soon sitting in a helicopter bound for the South Rim. As Fred and I waved to the helicopter that we thought was going to be our ride out of the canyon too, I asked, "Now, what the hell are we supposed to do?" We needed to get back to our car 16 long miles away. When I finally slogged into camp that night, I realized that in 2 days, I had hiked more than 33 miles in the canyon. The next day, Fred and I climbed out and hightailed it to Flagstaff. We found Jeffrey relaxing with a beer at an outdoor cafe. And were relieved to know that he had survived his trip to the hospital. It's been more than 10 years since the great tent stake incident. This summer, I'm heading back for a trip down the Colorado River, and I can't wait. I love the feeling of emptying my mind and feeling the wind in my remaining hair, even if it feels like a blast furnace. And I find that I am the happiest of campers when I'm standing at the trailhead wondering exactly what adventure awaits me.